Welcome to a very special, sort of somber live drawing. We will be doing another live drawing later today that's a little bit more happier, a little more cheerful. But today, of course, is 9/11. It's 20 years, and I mean, I was hoping to just do a nice remembrance for it months ago when I was initially planning to do this. Uh, but I'm going to be touching upon subjects today in this stream that I really don't want to bring to my streams, and I'm going to try to avoid getting too in depth with politics of this. But it's kind of hard to talk about this and not get in the politics of it. But we're going to do some drawing. I'm going to share some memories of my time and my day, where I was that time, and some reflections I feel that 20 years has come to pass, and sort of a almost ironic warning I've given back in 2013 in my own novel 11 Kingdoms. So we're going to touch on this stuff. If you have come here for a more happy, art fun and adventurous stream, go away. This is not going to be that stream. I am going to get mad. I'm going to get upset. I'm telling you right now. And I wish this were in better terms. I wish we could just come here and remember. But now we have deeper wounds. And I have a new perspective on what 9/11 means and what it is in history, not just America, but in the world. And that's what this stream is about. I literally was up most of last night thinking of what I was going to say in the stream. And I'm going to try and draw to keep myself calm through this. And we're going to draw a memorial. I, of course, am not using my VTuber for this because I want my face seen in this moment. I want to show the hurt, the pain that exists. I'm going to start not on September 11th, but September 10th, 2001. I had been working for about a month on my latest job. I've been out of college for almost a year, actually for over a year at this point. And I had been working at a retail position as a manager. And with it, I had to get my first apartment. So it was settled with me and my family that September 11th, the morning of, I would go out looking for my first place to move out on my own. I was happy. I was eager to get out and live on my own life. It was a bright, sunny day. It was a wonderful day. It wasn't too hot, it wasn't too cold. It was sunny, bright, and lovely. It was the kind of fall day that you dream of. By the time I got to the first place to look at, nothing had happened yet. On September 11th, I walked into this first apartment to look at. It was located here in Richmond, Virginia, on what is Monument Street Avenue, which is, of course, famous for, well, now infamous because of its monuments that have been taken down. But it was infamous. It had statues of Confederacy. Later is added also an Arthur Ashe statue based off the tennis player, African American tennis player that also comes from the area. And this isn't about those statues. I'm not going to get into it about that. I walk into this place, and if you can describe the rattiest, scummiest apartment one has ever seen, the carpeting was bright red. I mean, blood red. And it was stained. The walls were piss yellow. You had to go through a concrete floor bathroom to get to the kitchen and the bedroom. And it had a wonderful view, not of Monument Avenue, which is actually a beautiful street, but of the dumpsters in the back. And they were asking for something like $700 a month, which is expensive for 2001. The world was divided about issues. America was divided about issues. I mean, we were talking about stem cell research at the time. We were going on about what the arguments, there was still the arguments over elected and not selected of Bush at the time. And literally within an hour, the world changed. The act of cowards, and I'm not going to make this about religions. I'm not going to make this about American pride, even though we're drawing an American flag here. "9/11 was a day of cowards and heroes. And to take lives and use them as a bomb to destroy ideals, which is what happened. To destroy the American just peace and love. Well, by the end of the day, we saw the goodness in Americans. We saw true heroes. But in the end, looking back 20 years at a war that is now effectively lost, we cannot say we came out of this and won. We let cowards win. We let fear that was instilled on us on that day, fear that was brought forth with the fall of 4 planes. 2 in New York, 1 in Philadelphia, that was the first action of heroes, of just normal people standing up. One at the Pentagon. When I got in the car, running from that apartment, that rat hole infested apartment in a beautiful area of town, I heard it for the first time that a plane had hit one of the towers. Not but 5 minutes later, as I was driving, was it aware that a second plane had hit. By that point, I knew this was not an accident. This was an act of terrorism, and the likes the world had never seen. And in that act of terrorism, fear had been instilled in this world. Fear by the likes that no one has ever thought of. It was devastating to watch these build towers fall. I didn't make it home until after the second one started to fall. I literally made it home, and the first tower had fallen about literally 5 minutes before I got in. The just pure devastation, the pure act of this cowardice, and I there's nothing to it. If you honor the actions that happened that day from cowards, and I'm like I said, I'm not going to bring religion into this. They were cowards. A coward brings along the threat of life to another to get what power they seek. And their power was to create fear in this country, was to create fear in the world. And they did it. And in the actions of these last few days, they succeeded. I hate to say it, they have succeeded. We are not a world of heroes. I feel especially heartbroken for every man and woman who lost their life in a pointless war because we let cowards win. That evening on 9/11, I found my first apartment. And the day we attacked back, the hour we attacked back, the very moment we attacked back, was the moment I started to move. My first taste of freedom from my family was 9/11. And now, 20 years later, I fear freedom's dying. In my time, in my life, I've had the honor to speak with immigrants. I've had my honor to listen to horrific stories. Of war, of butchery, of barbarism from countries. And I kept saying to myself, we shouldn't be that way. America's better than that. We are looked up by many immigrants that I've talked to as a place to be better. We aren't. We aren't. I wish I could say that. But the actions of these days, the actions of idiots in power, and there's no other way to say it, they're complete fucking idiots. Um, and yeah, I'm going to swear in this scenario uh, because there's no means. This, one of the things I keep hearing uh, through news media and through connections and people is the fear that we're going into a civil war. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been in a civil war since 9/11. 9/12 was the day we started our civil war against ourselves. But it wasn't just America, it's a world civil war. On 9/11, one of the more impactful things that they don't even show anymore was the way the streets in Palestine, in Iraq, were in celebration of the death of 3,000 people. Dancing the street, handy candy out. Those were lives. Love them or hate them, those were lives. And to dance in the streets, that's just evil. I have no other word to say it. That's just evil. And I would dare a media to show that content these days. But they won't. Because they're gutless cowards. Like I said, this is going to be a stream unlike any other. In 2013, I wrote a novel. I wrote a novel called 11 Kingdoms. It reflected very much 9/11 in the term of freedom. And one of the things I wrote, because it was supposed to be an event that occurred 50 years from now, that we went into effectively a third world war years about this time. And that world war was not called World War III. It was called the War of Ideals. The ideals of religion, the ideals of freedom, the ideals of race, of belief, of history were destroyed in that novel. American history was outlawed. America had become a corporatocracy, a country completely run by a corporation. It also had to be stepped on and under the foot of a UN power that kept its foot on ideals such as freedom, because they feel it was the poison of the world. The actions of these last few months, these last few years, yeah, we're not at war in a civil war of just right and left. we're at war in world. We're in a world war because it's not just America fighting. It's places like Australia encasing their people in encampments and telling them you need to do this by law or else you will be imprisoned. It is Canada doing the same. England. This is us living in fear over freedom. 9/11 was the day freedom was struck, and we have let it bleed out for 20 years. Pretending that we had done all we could to save it, and we had done nothing to save it. We just made ourselves think that we will always be strong. And that's not a sense of greatness and American pride. That's a sense of personal survivability. If America can't survive this, then the world is not going to survive this. You are going to see more blood, starvation, abuse, to the likes, sadly, that no one has ever seen. You want to say, oh, well, I have my rights. Argue those rights against someone who is willing to put their boot on someone's neck because of who they are as a sex, who they are because of how they worship, who they are because they have a different opinion. You can't win that argument. You're literally fighting the ideals of another country, of another person. This country is doomed. There may be ways to save it in some manner, but 9/11 was, as I said, that point in our life that has ultimately taken the freedom and soul of what was created back in 1970 or in 1776 and had burned it to the ground. It is, in the immortal words of Ben Franklin, freedom. If you choose freedom over security, you will find greatness. If you choose security over freedom, then you cannot have either. Security, no one can be secure. There will always be evil. And 9/11 originally was going to teach us that, but we didn't want to listen. And now we have destroyed ourselves from the inside and out. I will be surprised that any one of the countries out there will come out for the better of the coronavirus situation, of wars that are building, of skirmishes that are building. I can honestly tell you, the blood has just started. The heat of people's fury, the anger. There's going to be a boiling point, and it is going to become devastating. and it's going to make the Civil War look like a joke. And that's not me making a threat. That is me making an observance of what we have put ourselves into as a country and as a world. Mankind has taken a horrible step back these last few months, these last few years, and with it, we're going to pay a much, much deserved price. A price for what we thought we never would want to pay. And if you want to argue, well, my rights trump yours, or you must do what the government says, you're an individual. God damn it, start thinking like one. Don't listen to what the other world tells you to do, what others tell you to do. Be your own self. That is what freedom is. It's not some government telling you who you are, what you should do, lining up and being, I should be who I want to be because I am believing that the government is right and that all is going to go my way if I just follow the government's way. That is how you become a victim. And history shows that. You don't believe me? Look up at every occurrence of communist rise. Every time. The greatest killer in history is communism. It has starved millions. It persecuted and butchered millions. And all because the government said it's that way. So believe what your government tells you and let them get their boots on your neck. This is not going to be your traditional 9/11 moment. I don't want to, like I said, get into politics because all sides are wrong. And they know it. They just want power. And the more power you give them, the more power they create because they expect you to be a coward. They expect you to hide in fear and go crawling to them and be like, I need my protection. I need safety. You need to be you. You need to be the you that is better. You need to be the person on 9/11. The neighbors that walked out and helped one another, that cried to one another. The millions of people that lined up just to give blood. On that day. To be human is to be free. But you can't be human and bend a knee. Then, and only then, are you a slave. And I, for one, will not be a coward. I will stand up to my dying breath and say no. I will help those in need. I will give a hand to anyone who reaches out. I don't care what your skin color is. I don't care what your sex is. I don't care who you identify as. You are a human being to me. And that means that I will do everything to protect your freedom. And it's time for you to decide. Will you protect my freedom and the freedom of your neighbors? And be the better person. Be the free person. The second set of people that were introduced to us in 9/11 was the heroes. At the time, it was firefighters, it was police officers, it was people sitting in rows on a plane in Philadelphia. They were people that became heroes that day. They said no. And that is what I want to honor today. The people who said no to terrorism, the people who said no to the cowards, and fought every avenue to try and bring peace and love into this world through freedom. Because that is what America was. And I pray that it can be again. But I doubt. I seriously doubt, after 20 years of watching this, that it will be. So let's talk about what we're drawing. We are drawing a torn and tattered American flag. And the tear is exactly the Twin Towers. In addition, there are renderings of an actual fireman's helmet and an actual police badge found in the wreckage. I do not know if these individuals lived, but they are the markings of heroes. And quite possibly them and the poor souls that have gone to war in this pointless war that we have now abandoned. They're the last heroes I think we will ever see. During the start of coronavirus, we wanted to say, oh, well, care workers, people working in their jobs through the coronavirus, the essential workers, they were heroes. I don't know. Honestly, don't know. And I can say that having been an essential worker during the height of the pandemic, I wore a stupid plastic shield over my face. And I can tell you right now, that didn't protect me. But I couldn't wear a mask because I had asthma. It would trigger, and with my job being very physically demanding, I would pass out and have an asthma attack. It's part of the reason why I'm not a military person is I have asthma. I can't serve. But I can speak out. I can be an artist to inspire. I can be a writer to inspire. And that's what I'm doing here today. I'm here to inspire. Inspire hope. Inspire pleads for us to survive. And it's not just America. Like I said, I fear the world is on its end. All it will take is goddamn idiots on multiple ends to push a red button. And the way we're heated up, the way we bully and attack each other over opinions, the way we demean the world because we don't agree with their views, saying our view is more important than their view, that will destroy us. Better than any nuclear weapon, that will destroy us. But it's idiots who think that way, in charge of buttons, that will cause the final destruction. When I wrote the story in 11 Kingdoms of the War of Ideals, there was the threat of nukes. There really was. The story goes that America was attacked, and they used terroristic acts through teaming up with drug cartels funded by other governments. They snuck in and started doing a dirty game of attacking countries. Suicide bombings became regular in the story. Mass murder for the reason of nothing more than to kill as many Americans as possible. That is the war of ideals. And when America asks for help, it doesn't get it. Because you're fighting guerrilla warfare. You're fighting an enemy who has no name, who has no uniform, and who could hide in plain sight. And we let it happen. And I flat out call out. I say the idiots in charge. The corporates that bend, generations that bend and let this happen. That we scream for reasons and politics to destroy who we are. And with it, we open the door for our own destruction. Ultimately, there are two main attacks in the story, and ironically, they are New York and DC. I have them as missile attacks from a submarine. The one for New York was supposed to be nukes, but luckily, the nukes they were sold were duds. The DC ones were mostly avoided. There are a few things that are damaged, memorials, buildings, the Capitol building itself. These were targets in 9/11. And these are still targets to this day. But we open ourselves up sadly, to the tag. We invite in our own threat. And that's how America dies. We invite our own destruction. It was warned upon us by many people before. Ben Franklin, Abraham Lincoln, two great individuals that, yes, you may have your reasons to hate them. They had their flaws. Everyone does. If you think your reasoning in this world, that you are a greater person, that you stand up on better empowerment than these people, you're wrong. You're dead wrong. You'll never amount to what these people were. You will invite your own destruction, as they foretold. Ben Franklin said, when the country was founded, what did we create? It was a republic. And that's the key word, the republic, not a democracy, the republic. And that means it is in our hands, not a government, our hands. And he said in those words, if you can keep it. He knew that if we kept being this way, in his words about safety over freedom, that the way to destroy it, the way to be it, is to cry out for safety, to let a government take control of our lives in the actions of safety, in the actions of what we need in our life to be safe and secure. Our republic is dead. It is killed by the actions of cowards. Cowards in power. Cowards out of power that want power. It is killed in the words of vitriol and despise for one another. In words of arguing over stupid, God-forsaken things, such as your rights over my rights. The only right you have is what you yourself can do. And if you want to argue over someone else's rights to do something, then you have no place in this country. Because you're the person who's destroying it. And you're destroying it through your own sense of justice. I wish so much that this was just a memorial. That 20 years we could look back at this country and say, my God, we were hurt, but we pushed through. But we can't say that anymore. We became cowards. We let our freedom die. And we didn't just let our freedom in America die. We let the freedom in the world die. What I would like to see in the future? Individual states. Individual states, I don't want a world peace group because there's never going to be world peace. If you look at the concept of bringing viewpoints together, it doesn't work. It really doesn't work. Unless you're willing to look at your fellow allies, the people near you, and say, you have your rights, I have mine, and I will fight for your rights just as long as you fight for mine. Even though we will disagree, we will be there for one another. If you cannot say that, then there's no hope. There is absolutely no hope for the country or for peace. And I can tell I've already screwed up this flag a bit. So we're going to erase a little bit. I want to count the bars, make sure I'm doing this right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So, no, I actually need 2 more bars. So, let's undo what I erased. And we'll do 1 more bar. Will there be something, some point in the future where freedom exists again? Where we can agree to disagree? That's one of the key things that we've torn ourselves apart on. I don't know. I'm just an artist, just a writer. And my God, I wish I could write a story and say, yes. I wish I could draw a piece of art and say, yes, we will. But I fear we won't. I fear we won't. And it's because we're at each other's throat for the stupidest of damn things these days. And we don't want to listen to each other. We want to have it our way and only our way. And if you disagree with me, you are wrong. You need to be destroyed. You need to not live. You need to not have any rights as a human being because my way is the right way. That's the way we believe this day. And if that's the way this country is, then there is no United States because we are in itself divided. To say that 9/11 was that point is sadly true. It is no better represented, I think, in media than in South Park. Almost a year after 9/11, we had the, I think, 100th episode of South Park that showed how divided the town was, and it was true. In a year from September 11th, we were already at each other's throats, blaming the other side for what was responsible and was done by cowards. That's who we should have been blamed. The true cowards of this world, led by a man who was insane and wanted nothing more than to create destruction and division. And guess what, ladies and gentlemen? He succeeded. He created the destruction and division that he wanted. Osama bin Laden won. He may have won from the grave, but he had won. I wish I was wrong. I wish I was wrong. And I'm actually doing that wrong here. I wish that our lives had come out of 9/11 for the better. I wish 20 years ago we took what we saw and we kept that spirit going. That the world saw the damage and kept moving forward. But it didn't. We moved backwards. We returned to dividing each other, attacking each other over beliefs, over history, over slights that didn't even happen to the individuals that are complaining, but to people they may or may not have even been related to. Has America done stupid and dumb shit that have caused problems in the world? Yes. But the world has created dumb shit and pain throughout itself. Have we paid for that in history? Yeah. Yeah, actually we have. I think people don't realize the true suffering of history that we've gone through to get to where we were. And now we are doing exactly what people have warned about. When you ignore history, you repeat it. And sadly, we will see the day that 9/11 is just a bullet point in history, and that we have repeated the actions in the day. And sadly, another tragedy. Be it another attack on America, be an attack on another country. With us being so divisive these days, I don't know if we will ever be able to come together like we did on 20 years ago and say, we are a greater thing than what these cowards attacked us with. We will not be going silently into the night, as it was stated by Bush. But instead, we will. We will be an afterthought in whatever history remains to be told. Especially when we invite our own destruction. Like I said, this isn't going to be the typical thing that I do. If you want happier stuff, or cheer for stuff, places of hope. I mean, tune into my other work. I will, until my dying breath, always tell stories. And I will hope for a better future. But I will fear bitter destruction. Because it is what we want to invite into this world. Back on September 11th, and days after the phrase "never forget" became the staple for 9/11. 20 years later, I fear we not only have forgotten, but we willfully turned from the lessons we had learned. We personally chose to leave behind what we had learned. All in the name of political correctness, to be greater people, quote, greater people, because the divisiveness of this country, because the wrongs that we had created. You want to look up wrongs? Let's talk about what happened with the Taliban before 9/11. The Taliban had destroyed religious statues, persecuted Buddhists. Now, I don't know about great element about Buddhist history, but I have never heard of a Buddhist war. The great statues of Buddha were blown up by the Taliban because no history belonged but the one they wanted. That is also why we were attacked. No history belonged but the one they wanted. And freedom was a tool of their destruction, and they knew it. And the only way to defeat it was to attack it. And to attack it at its roots. To take it and make people fear elements of freedom. To despise it. And the people who did, sadly, went on to teach, to tell children after 9/11, to tell them to hate their country, to hate what America has created, to build upon lies and destruction, and to divide us from within. Abraham Lincoln warned right around after the Civil War. He said, "A divided country from itself cannot stand." America's divided. The world is divided. The world will not stand. And that's the sad truth. And cowardice and ignorance will be what destroyed us. It'll be what destroyed the world. If you are one of my watchers and you are not from the United States, maybe you have similar feelings, maybe you don't. Maybe your own country is causing issues that make you question your rights, question your country's future. I used to, as a child, go with my family regularly on trips to Canada in the summer. I loved Canada. It's a wonderful country. I still love some of the things. Hell, one of my favorite YouTubers I like to watch is a Canadian. It's a beautiful country. And its freedoms are being destroyed. But I can't speak for Canada. I can't speak for England, Australia, or any of these other places. I can't even speak for Japan, and I love Japan. I think out of all the countries, Japan's doing it probably the best right now. Out of the coronavirus. But I can't speak for it because there are cowards and idiots in all walks of life. And sadly, those cowards and idiots we give power to. And in order for them to keep power, they've got to keep fear and distrust. In their repertoire. Almost done with the flag for what little it means. I don't know how many views this video will get. I honestly don't care. Hell, I'm sure this video could even be pulled down by YouTube or Twitch. Some may say it's vitriol and hate that I'm speaking. Others may very well agree with me. I simply am just tired of watching the lie. Of playing the game that we think things are good, that we think no one can get better than our way, our belief. And if you disagree with us, then you're wrong. there's a reason I don't stand with certain groups that I fit in with, and part of it is the way they act, the way they treat others. If you want me to ever go against you in an argument or a belief, it's you turn around and you look at your opponent, the people that are against your argument, and you look at them and you tell nothing but hate and vile and spew arguments on how they don't exist, get a right to exist. They are just oppressing you. We don't know what oppression is in America, at least not anymore. You want to know what oppression is? Ask an immigrant. Ask someone who's come from a country fleeing the terror and pain of an oppressive government. Someone who will actually fear for their life the moment they walk in a door because they may be executed because of what they said or who they chose to follow in beliefs of freedoms. If you think your opinion is more important, that others are wrong, and that it gives you a right to oppress because you feel oppressed, then you are absolutely in the wrong. If I wanted to make this about the virus, if I wanted to make this about the virus, I could very well go into a tirade over vaccinated and unvaccinated, but I'm not going to. I'm personally, unfortunately, unvaccinated, not by choice. I have an allergy. And we attempted it, and I immediately had a reaction that would have killed me had it not gone treated. That is something that actually happens in this world. There are people that have their own opinions and rights and beliefs for different reasons. And if you don't want to listen, if you just want to shut down people's views and opinions, then you're not a solution. You are just a bully. You are the actions of Nazis. And I mean true Nazis. Learn the history of what came or how things came to power, how Hitler gained power. Read history, for God's sake. But sadly, people won't. People will look at history and they'll bastardize it. They will say what they want and their opinions. And God help you if you have an opposing opinion, because it's going to be in the wrong no matter what they say. If you want to have a different opinion, you can't have a different opinion. Why would you ever try to have a different opinion? That is why I fear this country is doomed. This world is doomed. When you can't have an opinion and be persecuted for your opinion. To where you can't get a job, where you can't make a living because your opinion disagrees with somebody else's. That's absolutely in the wrong. I'm not saying your opinion is wrong. I am saying you are wrong to disagree with other people's right to an opinion. There's so much I want to keep saying, but I'm trying to bite my lip. There's so much I want to say, but saying it may not be the right thing to do. I remember a few days after I, of course, joined everybody else with blood drives that year. I gave my blood. I almost passed out from it because I'm a bit touch anemic, so it wasn't exactly smart of me to do it. But I gave blood. Since then, of course, the Red Cross has come after me for my blood because I'm O positive, a universal donor. I haven't really given again. Partially because of my anemia. Partially because I just don't feel like it would matter. I could give blood all I could, every moment, every day. Well, I can't, but because I need to reproduce blood to stay alive. But to give that blood up and likely it go to waste, because it does. Blood has a shelf life. And sadly, I feel the blood I donated that year very well could have gone to waste. Um, I know a positive likelihood of that is not very. Um, More than likely, you went to a surgery. But to have that fear that what good you do matters not. Sadly, I kind of feel is the way us soldiers must feel today, especially the ones that survived. The ones that have to look back at their friends who didn't and say, why the fuck did we go? What the fuck was it for? If we were just going to let it all go back to the way it was and worse by giving them power, giving them forces. Something did come out of that war. We successfully created the world's power, I think 13th or 30th, somewhere around there, greatest power. And we did it by leaving in the way we did, by abandoning our own kind. My God. If you follow me on social media, you know one of the things that I've been preaching about the last few weeks was about getting people home. And we, especially those in power, abandoned countless American lives. Not just on the battlefield, but we abandoned actual lives. And it's far more than what the people in charge have been saying. It's far more lives. Because we get lied to for power. We get lied to because if we don't know what the cost of it all was, if we ignore the lives and go back to just bickering about stupid shit, then they can hold on to their power just a bit longer. And they can live in a lap of fucking luxury that we pay for with blood. Honestly, there are elections coming up, including state here, my hometown of Richmond, Virginia. We get to vote for governor. One of the people I feel is probably the most evil, corrupt individual that has ever sat in the seat of governor. And he is supported by a man who currently sits in the seat of government, who is just as evil, if not worse. I get calls because I'm one of those people that get polled. If you ever ask, well, I've never been on a polling list. I am. I've argued for both sides at times over right opinions and wrong opinions. There are things that I fear one side that I may support will do. And there are things that I fear that the side that others support will do. But I can't go to the voting poll and be in fear and vote with fear. Because when you do, you get idiots. You get dumbasses. You don't actually vote for reasons and beliefs. And my God, if the person that you're voting for goes against it, you need to be able to stand up. You need to be the first person to stand up there and be like, fuck you. I put you in office. Get the fuck out. We will start to see some of that on Tuesday in California. I don't know. I fear that just the same will be as always in California. That nothing but fear and idiocy will rule that day. So once again, I state 9/11 was a day of heroes and cowards. And in 20 years, we let the cowards win. I lie awake at night hoping that that was never the case. But the sad truth is yeah, cowards have won. In every election since. We pray and we hope that the next election will matter. But we keep giving power to those that are cowardly and power hungry. And we say, oh, well, this time it'll be better. No. It'll be the same because you just keep letting the same people have power. And they just want money. They just want power. If you actually look at what they've done in their career, in their lives, most of them, they just voted themselves pay raises. That's it. They enforce rules on a society and never want to follow it themselves. And when you disagree with them, they will knock you down like the dog you are. And media, especially social media, promotes it. It promotes the side it wants to rule. When I started drawing this, sketching this out earlier, I debated on putting the name Smith and showing that on the badge because that's what was on the badge. But we need to remember the names. That's part of what 9/11 was for. That this day of memory is for. Just remember, there are heroes. Whether Smith lived, I don't know. I do know many didn't. From people jumping out of towers, sadly, to people just screaming the street. Why? Why was this done? In a world across, they danced and gave candy and celebrated the death of 3,000 people. I'm going to read a section on the War of Ideals in a minute. Once I finish this badge, I've got one more thing I want to draw. And then I will read the War of Ideals section from 11 Kingdoms. The book is going to be re-released soon. The irony, I've been working on it for a few years. It is going to be re-released in Amazon digitally, and also I'm going to try and get it so that it can be print on demand through Amazon. If you're interested in it, it is science fiction for now. And as I said, it's a story about freedom. And it's told through the life of someone who has their body and consciousness ripped apart. And they're having to prove their existence while dealing with a threat that no one saw coming. A threat that turns fear from enjoyment. And sadly, I do want to keep writing 11 Kingdoms books. And that is an overarching concept, that we live in fear. I have 2 novels in ideas to continue the series. And maybe in time I will tell those stories. Each looking at elements of fear and freedom. But I want to say one thing before I get into the depth of this. If you do have something to say about what I've talked about, be it in agreement or disagreement, I welcome you. I'm not going to fight back against you. I'm not going to argue with you. Comment on the video. I want to hear opposing discourse. I want to hear support. I want to hear what 9/11 meant to you and what it means now. Because I think now that the war of Afghanistan is over, 9/11 has a new meaning for the future. Sadly for me, as this video has gone on for an hour and a half now, that meaning is a tragic one. But maybe not for you. Maybe it's something new. Maybe it's something brighter. Maybe you fought in the conflicts. Maybe you lost someone dear. Maybe you weren't even born. I invite you to come and speak. Tell your opinions, your stories, your feelings. Where do you stand? Because the only way to understand and to come back to freedom is to be open and listening to others. And so that is what this video is going to be. An opening. I've spoken for an hour and a half on what I feel, on how I feel about this world and how it's become. Now it's your turn. What do you think? Sadly, I feel we don't do this anymore. We say we want opinions, but we bash people when they come up with their opinions. We attack people in their opinions in this day and age, and I'm not going to do that. If you have an opinion and you disagree with me 100%, say it. I will support it. I will listen to it. And I will wear it on my sleeve. You agree with me? Say your opinion. Tell your story. Draw your picture. Bring to life what this word, what this day means to you. Maybe it just means nothing. Maybe it's just another day like all the 9/11s before. I can't help but see the irony that 9/11 and 911 in the US is the symbol of, or is the number we call for help. Drawing these two items that are items found in the rubble that speak for people who came in there as heroes and likely died as heroes. I know we have a vitriol with police this day and age, the world over. I try not to see color. And yeah, I understand people have had hard times with police. They've been persecuted, and yeah, there are bad cops. There are horrible cops. I don't think I've ever heard anything about firemen, but yeah, they're bad firemen also. Um, they're bad EMS. They're bad doctors. There are bad people. And 9/11 reflects that. It was a day of cowards and heroes. And we need to remember it as such. So let's do the final bit here. Bring the flag back up. Let's add a few layers here. Because this is going black. And we're going to add just two things. Symbols that I don't know if they still exist. But back on 9/11, or since 9/11, they were. And they still should. Towers of light that appear at night. In all my talks today of freedom dying, it is the towers of light that we need to keep looking to. It is the light in humanity, in ourselves, not in a government, not in what we can do as a country, but what we can do as people. And that is our memorial. See, we even hit the wrong button there, so we're going to correct that. 2001. And I'm going to do a new phrase. I will never forget. Because never forget is lost. It has lost its meaning. But I will never forget. So let's do the reading. I'm kind of shocked at you. I looked at her as she continues. I'm doing this, as is Moloch, Kylie, or Moloch and Kylie, because exactly what Masaru spoke before the accident. In this game, the kingdoms can stand separately in the light of the world will dwindle and fade out. Or we can stand together in a common place and glow brightly. During the last war, my home country was blamed for the battles of the borderlands. Given it actually was later found out to be corrupt governments and drug cartels, we brought were brought out by the terrorist groups as a way to divide the United States forces, making them vulnerable to attack. The people of my country did not want to be involved, but we had no choice. Then came the day of the missile strikes on New York and DC. While our governments celebrated along with our allies, my people decided they've had enough, and civil war broke out, opening the U.S. soldiers to clear a path to head in and help regain control over our country. The war on the Western Hemisphere calmed down for to a few skirmishes. We needed a sign of courage and strength to lead us to turn from the side of our governments and the drug cartels. We got that sign on that day when we saw the buildings of New York fall. And yet, it only bolstered Americans. It caused them to push the attackers back through Mexico and across the Panama Canal. I looked at the woman. The War of Ideals was the last world war and is still recent enough that many of my upperclassmen remembered the live newscasts. Of course, everyone either born before or after have seen the footage of the evacuation of shelterings of New Yorkers before the strikes and several images of the buildings hit. I was too young to see images at the time. They occurred, but my mother made sure I knew about the destruction of the UN and Chrysler buildings. Because it was there that Dad suffered his war wound. He was a young photographer looking for work, and when the early warning came out, one of the news networks at the time hired him to try and get some images of the missiles as they hit. Except he made one small mistake and figured the UN building to be a symbol of all nations to be safe. He was found early after the strikes. His left foot was mangled mess, unable to repair by normal medical standards. As a reward for his determination, the news network turned him over to Black Clover to receive one of the prototype cybernetic limbs that they were working on. While New York was a secondary target and a cluster of missiles that hit were not armed with nukes, the ones that targeted DC had a greater threat. A twofold strike. First, a set of missiles were launched to break away buildings and safe rooms, while a second with nuclear payload would hit the center of government. However, the attackers didn't count on two things. The first being a defensive anti-missile drones that DC had launched a few weeks earlier. The second was that of the plans the terrorists were leaked and the nuclear materials were harmless and fake. In the end, the strikes did little damage, but struck a nerve in an already divided nation from scandals and politics of the first quarter of a century. And once again in history, a sleeping giant of America had woken and fought back. Much to the credit went to Black Clover's drones, the mech suits that at the time only American forces and its allies had access to. Both cities damaged was repaired and rebuilt except for one site. The Statue of Liberty had taken a blast from a thermite-based missile and melted its structure from its feet. Now, instead of an iconic image of a statue standing tall, it looks more like a statue rising from the sea, torch held high. She was left that way to remind us of how fragile our liberty was, how we must struggle to keep its flame alive. By the end, America was reborn. It was weaker, but it still stood strong as a symbol of freedom and liberty. The war was all about freedoms and rights. In the end, the UN promoted themselves to the chief judiciary of all actions of war and threats to nations. A choice that many, including the powers in control of the UN or US, were not happy to see. That is a war, when I wrote, that I do not ever want to see in my lifetime. But that is a war that we are already in. I thank anyone for watching this video, for listening to me rant, for standing by me. And if you commented on this video or liked this video, then I thank you even more. Even if it's a vile crediting of me. That's fine. You can disagree with me all you want. I stand for that freedom of your choice. Now I'm going to go silent for a few hours, and I will return at our usual time, hopefully with a happier drawing, a live drawing, something a little bit more cheerful. Another request, and as always, if you have a request, you can make it. Just don't make it in this video, honestly. I'm not going to take any requests that are posted in this video. I will only hear opinions and arguments. But I thank you for listening to an artist and a writer rant for an hour and 40 or an hour and 50 minutes. Remember 9/11. Not for what it was, but what it should be.